currently not feeling 100% to physically attend. I will need to take a vote of the council to allow the remote appearance. So, okay. I will go ahead and do this here since you're not set. I'm going to go ahead and just call a verbal roll call at this time, or vote. Councilmember Sullivan? Councilmember Bash? Yes. Mayor Pro Tem Grunmeyer? And let's get here. And Councilmember Bowen?
Here.
Okay. And motion passes. Thank you. And at this time, I need to ask, Mayor Newton, is there any other individuals 18 years of age or older in your presence?
No.
Okay, thank you. I'll proceed to roll call. Councilmember Sullivan? Here. Councilmember Bowen? Here. Councilmember Bash? Mayor Pro Tem Grunmeyer? Here. Mayor Newton?
Here.
Okay, all present. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. At this time, I'm going to call upon the city manager to start our budget workshop.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, and Mayor remotely. I'm here to present the fiscal year 25-26 preliminary budget. The city's mission. The City of Norco is here to serve its residents, business, and visitors in a friendly, ethical, and cost-effective manner with excellent customer service to provide and preserve a high quality of life that values its identity as Horsetown, USA. Our budget process is year-round. At the beginning of the fiscal year, the budget is implemented based on the adopted operating and capital improvement budget. In February is when we do our mid-year adjustments based on the current year. And in March, we had our budget priority workshop to discuss what our priorities for the city are for the next fiscal year. We are currently, through May and June, we'll be having city council workshops where we are reviewing our operating and our capital proposed budgets. And by June 30th, we need to adopt our budgets in order to be able to fund any expenditures. As part of our presentation in our workshops, we will be discussing the Norco dilemma, where types of funding requirements for our equestrian lifestyle, the status of our current fiscal year that we're on, and the overview of what is in our preliminary 25-26 general fund budget. We'll be discussing our budget projections, an overview of the budget deficit, key factors and economic conditions, cost savings, measures, as well as ways to decrease the projected deficit. We'll be discussing revenues, expenditures, and department overviews, as well as our fund balances. We'll also be discussing how we could balance the general fund budget, and we'll provide an overview of our other major funds, and as well as go over our capital improvement budget. We do have a little code section, color code legend for you here. So our revenues are in green, or savings, expenditures in orange for losses or expenditures. Our deficits are noted in red, and any surplus is in blue. Here's part of the Norco dilemma. It's how do we fund the equestrian lifestyle with keeping our large lots for agriculture and animal keeping. Some of the challenges that have taken place in Norco is we have a lower tax base with less homes per acre. There is an aging infrastructure, rising costs to maintain our streets, our trails, parks, facilities, and our equestrian amenities. The conservation of our very parks and open space, and also the limited available land to have new development for revenue growth. And the solutions is how do we support and attract significant revenue generators and also control our spending and prioritize our services. Years ago, there were significant costs and services that were cut. At that time, projected that revenues would not be able to keep up with expenditures. Fortunately, in 2018, Norco voters approved Measure R to fund infrastructure improvements and prevent costs to public safety. However, we will still face those projected challenges in how to maintain our current level of general fund services, which requires cost-saving measures to avoid a deficit. This slide here was actually projected back prior to Measure R and as part of those items. And at that time, for this fiscal year, they had projected a deficit of 6.8. For our current fiscal year status, we started the fiscal year with the 36.1 million general fund balance. We're projecting a $1.2 million deficit, which is mainly due to two items, the reclassification or reallocation of our franchise fee for street impact fees going out to street improvement fund, as well as our decrease in lease revenue. With that, we expect to end this fiscal year with a fund balance of $34.9 million. As for the next fiscal year, in our general fund, we are projecting revenues of $29.5 million, expenditures of 35.2 with a deficit of 5.7. I know this is not easy to present, and we're going to try to discuss some of the reasons for this deficit. With our budget projection, if we balance the budget with our current reserves, the projected fund balance at the end of the fiscal year will be $29.2 million. To provide an overview of our budget deficit, the total expenditures are basically projected to exceed our total revenues. It is a status quo budget for most of the part. The goal is for council to understand what's actually included in our deficit. We looked at savings from larger items, small items that will make a dent, but with the deficit is still significant. And then we'll also need to discuss how we would want to balance the deficit. Reserves, to note, are generally used as a one-time expenditure. We don't recommend always using them to fund our operating cost. It's like using your checking account for your operating, but if you always continue to use your savings account, you're going to end up in problems. So let's see. Some of the items is the current inflation trends, how they impact revenues and expenditures. The cost of services continue to increase. Public safety costs are significantly increasing. We have limited tax growth. There is no new completed development or hotel openings expected in the next fiscal year. The reallocation of the vehicle impact fees based on our new franchise agreement and how that's with the new regulations. And also the decrease in the lease income, and as well as the loss in grant funding. So we need to reallocate and try to find how we continue those services without that grant funding. When we had our budget priority workshop, these were some of the main items that we discussed that were projected to increase based on this current year. The sheriff's contract, the CAL FIRE, Riverside County Fire Department contract. We talked about contracting a full-time fire specialist and having a part-time deputy fire marshal, having a wildland protection agreement, increasing our emergency management support, continuation of the homeless services. Here, the homeless services only includes what the general fund amount would be funded. An additional 200 would be coming out of the housing fund. And we also discussed the additional funding for the 4 new authorized positions, but the funding still needs to be determined on. As far as revenues, we did have decreases in revenues to add to that, and it's the vehicle impact fee that was transferred from the general fund to the street improvement fund and our lease income. Just with our vehicle impact fee, we're not losing that franchise fee revenue. It's just being reallocated due to the regulations that the Nexus requires that it be for street improvement types of maintenance and projects. Some of the big key budget factors. It's uncertain the economic conditions continue, how this will impact our revenues and expenditures. Revenue growth is slower than our expenditure growth. Revenue is basically staying stable and for the next fiscal year. Tariffs may impact the cost of services, materials, and how consumers have in their spending habits. The federal policy changes may impact the availability of grant funds. Current inflation trends will also impact our expenditures, and the expenditure growth is driven by normal cost increase and regulatory requirements. And also with that increase, our contractual services and capital projects are likely to increase due to inflation. Public safety. The public safety contract rates continue to increase. For each contract, it's approximately $1 million compared to the prior. The Riverside County Sheriff's contract is a 14% increase and estimated at $8.6 million. The CAL FIRE Riverside County Fire Department contract went up 15% at $6.9 million. Salaries and service levels. Services levels are staying status quo, and we are requesting for the 4 newly authorized positions for funding for those. As far as labor negotiations are in process, the MOU with NGEA will expire at the end of June, and currently we don't have an agreement with our Public Works and Facility at this time. These are some of the cost-saving measures that staff has gone through to review the budget. When the initial budgets were presented, we had to go back and had some additional cuts. So departments went through, reviewed, tried to adjust where they were actually spending historically, and reduce some of those services. We also reviewed in our internal service cost, we reduced our vehicle replacement charges by about $123,000. So we will try to regain that in future years depending on how the general fund lands. And as well as we reduce our charges to information technology charges to divisions. Our public safety contract rates, which I'll get into the next slide. With the public safety and the salary projections, we calculated a savings from vacancies. So we already had cut about $800,000 from public safety contracts and $380,000 in salaries. In the past, salaries were budgeted at top steps. In this current fiscal year, they're budgeted at a 2-step increase. However, with the projections of where we have always landed with the vacancies, we've also taken into account that in this fiscal year for 25-26. And we also, to reduce the budget, all our current vacant positions that are currently open, we budgeted them at PEPRA classification, meaning the cost for retirement will be less than if a classic employee comes in. So those are some of the cost savings that we took. With the three main costs in our budget and our general fund is salaries, benefits, sheriff's contract, and our fire contract. We took an average of what the last 5 years between what we had budgeted in each budget versus actual for those three items. And at the last column was showing what the average was. So for city salary and benefits, about 8% was always the savings in our general fund. Sheriff's contract on average was 5%, and fire contract 3%. So with that, we projected how we came up with our vacancy rate to reduce already what you have in front of you. Oops, sorry. Balancing the budget. At this time, we have no current programs and or service levels that have been reduced or eliminated. So we are currently, this preliminary budget shows our just continuation of what we are currently doing. The City Council will determine how to allocate available funds to support our budget priorities and how to balance the budget. We do have some financial flexibility that we could provide with our other funds, as well as how our reserve policy has been developed to ensure that when there are times in times that we do need to use funding, that is available to us. So currently, our undesignated general fund balance is $20 million. Our equipment, another thing that we have available to us is our equipment replacement fund currently has a $6.7 million balance. Our internal service fund for information technology is $1.9 million. Measure R has a fund balance of 13.2 as of March, and our OPEB trust that was set up has a balance of 14.2 million. And currently, in this budget, we have retiree medical costs of 1.1 million. The OPEB trust may be used for funding your retiree medical in times we would. I wouldn't recommend that doing continually, but in times where it's needed, that is an available option. We also have our pension rate stabilization fund that we started funding a couple years ago. That currently has a balance of 4.7 million, and in our budget, we currently have a contribution of 300,000 in our general fund and 100,000 in our water and sewer fund. We also have designated in our reserves donations and sponsorships. So we've designated them and set them aside specifically for special events and programs. And with that, I'll hand it over to Daphne.
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Daphne. Next, I will have a discussion on general fund expenditures and revenues. Start with revenue. Here is the summary of the general fund revenue. Total projected revenue for fiscal year 25-26 is 29.5 million, which is about 900,000 less than the amended budget for this current fiscal year, which is about 3% decrease. This significant revenue deduction is mainly due to, as Lizette mentioned earlier, One is reallocation of the vehicle impact fee, about 900,000, and also reduction in the lease revenue, about $500,000. This pie chart shows the revenue by category. As you can see, the top three major source of revenue for the cities are sales tax, property tax, and property tax in lieu of vehicle license fee and franchise fee. This slide provides a similar information, but it gives a visual comparison of fiscal year 25-26 projected revenue with current year amended budget, also the year-end estimates for fiscal year 24-25. As you can see, most of the revenue categories are either flat or slightly decreased if you compare category by category. The next slide shows the revenue trend since fiscal year 19 and 20. One thing I would like to point out is lease revenue that city has earned or projected are the highest in city's history. But we are starting to see the slightly declining, so that's the current trend right now. But remember, this is the highest since the history of the city. The next show I will okay, this one is the city's major categories. I will start with the sales tax. Sales tax is the largest general fund revenue sources. It counts about 35% of the general fund revenue. The projected budget for fiscal year 25-26 sales tax revenue is about $10.5 million, which represents city's share of Bradley Burns 1% sales tax. Please note that this estimate does not include Measure R sales tax revenue, only the 1% Bradley Burns. Okay, this pie chart shows the sales tax breakdown. Currently, City of Norco's sales tax is about 8.75%. Within this 8.75%, 1% is the Bradley Burns, and the other 1% is the Measure R, transaction use tax that city receives. Put this percentage in dollar. Every sales tax dollar collected, city receive about 11 cents on the Bradley Burns, another 11 cents for the Measure R. This graph shows city's sales tax revenue by major industry group. As you could tell, city's highly relied on the sales tax on auto and transportation industry. It was almost tripled in the second category. So this can be a potential risk. The next slide shows city's sales tax revenue projections for the next 2 years. 1.3% projected increase in fiscal year 25-26 and 3.4% increase in 26-27. However, please keep in mind that sales tax is highly sensitive to economic condition. The next slide shows sales tax trends with a longer time frame since fiscal year 15-16. As I mentioned earlier, recent years' revenue are the highest in city's history. Okay, the second major source of revenue for the city is the property tax and property tax in lieu of vehicle license fee. The projected revenue for fiscal year 25-26 is $6.9 million, which is 6% lower than the current year's amended budget. Even though residential sales price for the properties are nearly record high, but due to high interest rate and other economic uncertainties, relative fewer sales took place on the market. Property value does not increase based on the market rate unless there's a buy and sell activities. So that's why even though the value of the property going up, the assessment on those properties, there's no transaction, buy and sales, stayed relatively flat. This slide illustrates the breakdown of the property tax dollar. Norco General Fund received less than 10 cents per every tax dollar collected for property tax. This slide is the 10-year property tax revenue trends. The line is starting to flatten or even declining. property tax in lieu of vehicle license fee refer to the property tax revenue that city and counties in California receive as a compensation for reduction in vehicle license fee. Based on the most updated information received after we release the preliminary budget, we will propose additional $200,000 additional revenue on this category, just for your information. The next two slides are two next major categories of revenue for the city. The first one is the TOT, Transient Occupancy Tax. For fiscal year 25-26, the projected revenue including full operation of the True Hotel. Next slide is the refused franchise fee. As Lizette mentioned earlier, one of the reasons the projected revenue for general fund in fiscal year 25-26 is lower than the current year is due to reallocation of the vehicle impact fee. Based on the Nexus study, about 50% of the refused franchise fee for the vehicle impact fee need to be relocated. So for the fiscal year 25-26, we put into the street improvement fund instead of general fund. Next two slides are the summary of the revenue projections by category, just for you to review. So as you can see, most of the categories are either flat or decrease. So that's causing the overall revenue to be decreased for the general fund. Okay, next I will talk about general fund expenditures. The projected general fund expenditure for fiscal year 25-26 is $35.2 million, which is 7.9% more than the current year amended budget. Here is the summary of the general fund expenditure by category. Based on the chart, we can see more than half of the budgeted expenditure is under contractual and professional services. And the majority of the costs within this category are for safety contracts, police and fire. The next slide, we regroup the expenditures by function. Police and fire services are the two functions that have the highest costs. Here's the pie chart to show the expenditure by function. Same information as this one, just a different way of presenting it. The next expenditure by function by comparing the current year amended budget and year-end estimate with the fiscal year 25-26 projected amount. The biggest increase occurred in sheriff, fire, and community services, which Lizette will explain in detail in the department overview section next.
Here the org chart shows the functions of each of our departments. Public safety and our city attorney are fully contracted. Some departments contract out some of their support services. As we go through the department's individual budgets, overall, in looking at all our budgets in whole in our general fund, these are some of the reasons that are common in most of our departments' individual budgets. An increase in electricity and natural gas cost, increase in software subscription cost, also an increase in our specialized services and contracted maintenance cost. Our salaries and benefits, some of the increases is due to the first full year of previously funded positions, and also some decreases due to the savings from vacancies. Also, other items that we noted, we did decrease overall our conferences and meetings based on, departments went through and analyzed where there was a need and where we could cut some of that, but still continue to ensure that our staff is being trained and brought up to to know the current regulations. And also a slight increase in uniform allowance. This will allow us to enhance our current work culture and our customer service and ensure that we're consistent throughout city. For our sheriff's contract, currently it is an $8.68 million projected budget. It is an increase of 12.4% increase. The original contract was provided at $8.6 million. With the vacancy factor taken into account, in our preliminary budget, we are projecting $8.1 million. And that is due to the 4% that we applied, and as well as having additional funding through our supplemental law grant, which provides an estimate of $175,000 to be able to cover the contract. And also, just to note, the sheriff budget does include our sheriff law enforcement, citizens on patrol, and the cost for our crossing guards. Under our fire budget, it is projected of $6.87 million. That is a 28.4 increase. The original contract that was provided was $6.9 million, which is a 15% increase. With our vacancy projection, we are proposing the budget at $6.6 million. We use a 3% vacancy, and this will be the first full year of implementing the full 66-hour work week for the fire. There are funding requests in here. Under fire, we do have the Wildland Protection Agreement for $67,000. Additional funding for emergency management department support of $50,000, and that is converting them from an 8-hour to 20 hours. And we also are converting the part-time contract fire inspection to upgrade to a full-time specialist, and convert the part-time contract fire specialist to a deputy fire marshal. In administration, the proposed budget is $1.9 million, which is a decrease of 7.3%. In administration, this includes the city clerk, city manager, communications, economic development, and human resources department. Some of our highlights of the decrease is a decrease in city manager salary. We do have increase in cost for software subscription. During our budget priorities workshop, we did discuss the contract management initiatives. Due to our current fiscal standing, we've decided to put that on hold and just defer it for a future fiscal year. There are 2 new funding requests in our administration. We're asking for funding for a full-time human resource analyst, and even though IT is an internal service fund, it's under administration, so the funding for the full-time IT technician as well. Here's just a chart to show where currently the administration division is, and where are the positions that are currently not funded. I do want to make a note that the intern positions, those are, we have 3 intern positions, and those are directed to where they are to be placed based on the current needs. So the city manager, depending on the department's needs, those positions are moved around. The non-departmental budget is $5 million budget with a projected decrease of 9.6%. Currently, most of the costs in our non-departmental are remaining flat. You'll see the reason for the decrease is that's where we had the transfer out to the vehicle impact fee, so that's no longer being transferred. It's just now we've removed the revenue and the expenditures out of the general fund. So that's where, why the decrease in that. And also the NPDES funding, usually the general fund in the last couple years has had to subsidize that. So that's one of also, it went a $60,000 savings from the current budget. In here, we also fund our utility billing subsidy program. That's about $200,000. Our community development budget is $2.57 million with a projected increase of 15%. In our community development, this includes building and safety, code enforcement, and planning. Some of the highlights in their budget, they do have the completion of the general plan to be carried over to the next fiscal year. We have an increase, this is a full year of the full-time administrative assistant position, as well as the first full year of our code enforcement supervisor. And funding is included for the full-time, the building official that is currently vacant, plus contracted services during recruitment. Community Service Department is projected at $3.5 million with a 22.2% increase. The divisions that are in here is Animal Service, Recreation, Senior Services, and Youth Sports and Family Services. Part of the budget is our Parks and Recreation Needs Assessments will continue into the next fiscal year. This also has a salary due to a full year for our full-time administrative assistant. And also the grant funding for homeless services has been included in this division as the funding is no longer available. As a reminder, the total is $855,000 with part of it in here and the $655 and the housing fund funding $200,000 of it. Our special events currently is budgeted at $258,000 with a projected increase of 18.9%. Our projected revenues is about $152,000, and that includes donations, ticket sales, and concessions. This is one where our budgets includes the full cost for each event, not including sponsorships or donations. And the special events are handled through our Community Services and Facilities Maintenance Department. We also currently have in our fund balance, we have designated the donations and sponsorships up to date that we have. So that is an item that we do have available if we need to fund some of these programs. Finance has a budget in our general fund of $672,100. That is a projected increase of 10%, mainly due to the finance director vacancy that is now expected to be filled. Thank you, Joshua. And the other increase in here is our professional audit services and software subscriptions. Our Facilities and Maintenance Department projects a budget of $4.4 million. It's an increase of 2.6%. The divisions included in this is facility maintenance, Ingalls Event Center, and our park maintenance. This does not include any of our capital improvement programs or budget. The highlights here is the increase is mainly due to the full year of having an administrative analyst. And the other main reason is the increase in contractual services cost. One new funding request included in here is to fund the full-time parks maintenance workers for Ingalls Event Center. And here's the facilities and maintenance org chart. Our Public Works Department is projected with a budget of $905,000 with a decrease of 32.7%. In the general fund, this division includes engineering, inspection, parkway maintenance. However, the Public Works Department's its main funding sources come from our special revenue and enterprise funds, which are the storm drain fund, street maintenance fund, water, sewer, and recycled water operations. And just like facilities, their costs are not their CIP costs are not included in this budget. Some of the highlights in this budget for the decrease is the backyard trail maintenance is now funded by Measure R, as well as a decrease in the street maintenance costs to reallocate the vehicle impact fees to the street improvement fund. We do have a new funding request in this department. One is for the full-time utility compliance coordinator, and also reclassify the Deputy Director of Public Works to a Public Works Manager. That would provide a savings of about $30,000. This is the Public Works org chart, and with the vacancy and the amount that's not currently funded. We went through and reviewed the funding requests for the personnel for the 4 positions. Because some of the positions work in multiple areas, they are allocated to various funds. And so this shows the actual net effect for each position and the total estimated cost for each fund. Now to get into our general fund balance. Here we have our estimate of what our general fund balance schedule is expected. So we currently, as part of our reserve policy, we have designations to assist for when there's emergencies, any local emergencies or natural disasters. We have a reserve policy that when we do have a surplus, when we end the year with a surplus, we will set aside a certain percentage to designate it for infrastructure as well as economic development. And we also have a designation for special projects. In this special projects is the donation and sponsorships, our construction and demolition, as well as other items that have been earmarked for special items throughout our policy. And this will result with an undesignated fund balance of $14.3 million. Yeah. This is the same information, just in a chart format, and to point out, this is what the fund balance would result in if with the deficit already in there. So this is the undesignated fund balance if we just balance the budget with our current general fund reserve. Our designation for emergencies, that's usually 3%, not sorry, 3%. It's usually 25% of the fiscal year, so that emergency is set aside. We set aside basically 3 months worth of expenditures. Here we see the trend of our fund balance over the last 10 years. We see where our revenues have actually landed, as well as our expenditures, and how the fund balance has been increasing relatively to that. You could see where it jumped up during COVID when we received the ARPA funding, and now you could see where projected in 25-26, where our revenues are not growing at the rate of our expenditures and where our fund balance is landing. Looking ahead, we have our current budget challenges and considerations for this upcoming fiscal year, and what also might be happening beyond. The current inflation trends will continue to impact both revenues and expenditures. We have a limited sales tax growth since our city is almost built out. Our cost of services, our contracted public safety will likely continue to increase. And as a reminder, our reserves should only be used for one-time expenditures. And we were also, to keep in mind, we want to continue to try to preserve those reserves and be able to set aside for when they're needed. And this is just to recap where part of our dilemma, where it presents some financial challenges. To balance the budget, at this time, no current programs and/or services have been reduced or eliminated. It is the same current level of service, with just the increase in the majority of it being the cost. Some of our funding options is use our general fund reserves, defer certain items to a future fiscal year, reallocate existing funds to a different priority, reduce funding for projects, programs, and services, or transfer from other funds. And before we get into any of the other major funds, I would like to have this open for any questions regarding the general fund preliminary budget.
All right, thank you, Lizette. We'll go ahead and, Kevin, do you want to go ahead and start with questions?
I don't have a question, but I have a compliment. I mean, other than the budget. That is the clearest, the Norco dilemma. That is so useful. And just the way you described all of that, it's the most succinct I've ever seen it. And I think it's something that if we can get to our residents, because I don't think they always understand the Norco dilemma. So I really applaud you for that. I have lots of questions, but I think at a later date I'll have them. Thank you very much.
Fia? Greg?
By what Kevin said, and he doesn't have nothing on you. It was very well brought, and thank you very much.
So Lizette, I guess I have a clarifying question. So when you ask questions, is this like digging into the books and the numbers and where we maybe had questions on specific expenditures and things like that, or do you want that at a different study session? Like, what are your thoughts? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so I have a couple of questions, probably primarily for clarification. And again, I struggle because when we had the workshop earlier, right, when we were talking about what are our priorities and those kinds of things, I don't know why I had in my head like a $2 million deficit, not a $5 million deficit. So it's changing the lens that I'm looking at stuff, going from 2 to 5. And I think the other kind of struggle I'm having is I've seen what I feel could be like, you know, $15,000 here, $10,000 there, which when you're looking at $5 million, you're like, is it worth nitpicking that much, right? But then part of me is like, well, it would all eventually add up if we took those little pieces out. So, and then the other part of like my thought process is staffing levels in particular departments and really understanding the nature of the work and the necessity of the staffing levels. I think for the most part, we have a really clear understanding of like public works, for example, or the administration department, where maybe other areas I'm not as clear as what all the position responsibilities are. And some of that is just from observation, going to events and trying to understand, okay, there's 5 staff members here, like what is everybody's specific role at an event, and what is the kind of criticalness of having staffing levels at that kind of level. Does that make sense, kind of where my head is at? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just gonna start nitpicking then. If we go to special events, for example, one that stood out to me is trunk or treat. And so then for my colleagues, I'm in the notebook, and I'll tell you guys what page it's on. So page 250, like $15,000 for supplies. In my head, I know there's balloons and decorations, but there's obscene amounts of candy as well, right, at that event that I'm assuming are also in that budget. And so, you know, as I was looking at the book and thinking about that, it's a wonderful event, huge attendance, but part of me is like, are we, the city of Norco, funding an event for our region and not for our community? And are those some things that, as the budget gets tight, that we need to kind of maybe look at reframing some of those events? And it's not just going to cut the $15,000 in candy or balloons or whatever it is. We would see a reduction in staff time and staff, all of those things, right, that kind of add up. And so are those the kinds of discussions that we need to have today? Are those, you know, something that I kind of throw out my menu of things where I'm willing to have discussions or potentially make cuts, and then everybody goes back and thinks about it and kind of ruminates on it, and then we make decisions later? I don't know what that looks like.
Yes, and this is part of our workshop. So, you know, you guys could discuss what issues, what concerns, and what items. We as staff will go back, you know, and take into account all your items that you're noting and make revisions and for the proposed budget. So, and that's the purpose of our workshops.
Okay, so then I'm just gonna kind of throw out a menu of things, and if I need clarification, certainly, you know, I can ask for that. But some of the things that are kind of sticking out to me are like our We People and day camp programs, like the creativity classes and those kinds of things, and where those potentially are at. And again, are we providing services for our community, or are we providing regional services? And if we're regional, I guess I don't have a lot of concern over that, other than the fact I would want us to at least break even in those particular areas. And then the other one that I had some questions on, obviously CAL FIRE's had a big jump. But when I'm looking at CAL FIRE, for example, and looking at those positions that we potentially authorized for inspection and all of those, are we required under some of that to have those services performed by CAL FIRE, or is it something that we as a city can subcontract out and find better pricing other than CAL FIRE to do like inspections or the plan checks or some of those types of things?
So just a clarifying statement, we don't contract out with CAL FIRE, we contract contract out with Riverside County Fire Department.
Oh, thank
And the county contracts out with the state, which is CAL FIRE. So those are
Okay.
county provided services, just
Okay.
to be clear.
Yeah, so, but do we have to use that model, or can we find a private contractor that would be less money, maybe, to do those services? Yeah,
In the past, we're talking.
you have to have your microphone on.
In the past, we're talking back in the 90s and 2000s, our city inspectors used to do those fire inspections. And then fire department took it back over. So we used to have our city inspectors that were on staff. And I'm only talking about like Corona and all the other ones. And somewhere down the line, the fire marshal jumped in and took it back away from the cities. Is that something that they passed that we can't, roll back? Because we already have the guys in place to do it. We got our city inspectors, and we already have a contract with them. And it would just be one more inspection for them, but I don't know if we can roll it back.
No, that's what this is for.
That,
to have
that
the
is something
discussion.
that we'll have our legal review for contract obligations.
Okay, and then, as I got the emails and the RSVPs for the summer, we have something every single weekend. And the movies in the park, for example, attendance has definitely increased with making the move to Pikes Peak from the community center. So kudos to staff for making that change. But again, I think it's one of those things that we need to evaluate. Do we have to have a movie or a concert every single Friday? And what are the costs associated with that? And even with the concerts last year, I would say concert attendance was down a little bit last summer from previous summers. And so, that's vacations. Sometimes it was just still too hot at 7 o'clock at night to go sit in the park for a concert. And so evaluating some of those special event costs as well. And again, please know, I'm not saying to eliminate them, but when we first started, it was like every other weekend or something like that. So if council, had a vacation planned or something, you didn't feel guilty for not being at a city event. And so, and you could say, well, Robin, you don't have to go to every thing, but I know there are some of us up here that, as council members, feel obligated to go to everything. And so it's just a dynamic that I think as we're looking at budgets and things like that, that we could certainly evaluate as well. So at this time, that's a few things that I'm just going to kind of throw out there for council's consideration. Mayor Newton, do you have any comments?
Robin, can you hear me?
Yes.
Just a couple of comments to like what you were saying about maybe being, like picking at smaller items or something like that. And I found myself doing the same and going through the different funds, whether it was in planning or recreation, that we show like $1,000 expenditure for safety gear in every department. I'm not sure what type of safety gear planning department needs, or youth, sports, and facility or family, what we need there for safety gear. But where we had previous expenses of a couple of $100, the projected budget, every one of them's $1,000. And it's that I think we need to take a closer look at. You got to start with all those small little items. But one that had jumped up to me, like I said, it's maybe still getting into the weeds, but on page 133, under community services, youth, sports, family, for the life of me, I do not know what basketball baseline buckets are. but last year spent $342 on it, and this year, the request is for 7,000.
On that one's
I have
actually, that's actually revenue
I
coming
have
in.
no clue what that even is. Okay.
Sorry, Mayor, could you hear me?
Mayor, can you hear Lizette?
But my further question for Lisette, I think overall on this is it possible for you to tell us at this time what our projected structural deficit is for the next 2 years?
At this time, with our summaries, we don't have that, but with what was used in the past as the projections for the following fiscal year, it's also about, let me see, about 7 million based on this financial projection that was done. But we could, for the next budget workshop, we could work on estimating
Okay.
the next additional 2 years out.
All right, but it kind of blindsiding you with that right now. You have a guesstimate that in 2 years will be another $7 million deficit with these current projections.
If the current expenditures continue at the same rate with revenues just slightly growing, that is a correct statement.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Robin. That's all I have right now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. One other kind of thing, with homeless services, I'd like to take another look at that as well, because again, I had the lens of a $2 million deficit, not a 5. And so I know we had a few different options on the table on that program. So I think we need to go back and reevaluate what we need to do there as well, at least, again, just from my perspective, that we shouldn't have anything that's not on the table. And then one other question I had was just on donations for like animal control and some of those departments. Are you conservative on the projections for what comes in on donations? Or do you look at a historical pattern? So for example, if for the last 3 years, Horse Week Committee has donated $7,000, do you kind of look at that as a projected revenue, or do we just kind of stay low, not expecting any donations at all?
We do account for historical data. So we look at, what has come in the last couple years, and a lot of times we'll take the average, or we know if it's going to be like something that a lot of people are interested in stuff. Usually, okay, that could increase. So.
And then the last question I have for now, because I don't want to monopolize all the time, the city sponsorship program. Do we have the data of how much money was collected prior to changing over to the sponsorship program, and then what's been collected since switching over to the new format of how people can sponsor for city events?
We could prepare that and bring that back at the next workshop.
Okay, that would be great. And I know you guys have projections on where you want to be with those donations, but if we can get an idea of where we're actually at on those sponsorships for the city, that would be wonderful too. Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I just had one question. What is a basketball bucket?
Let me ask our community services.
You said that was revenue?
Yes.
Hi, yes. It is revenue. It's a skills program. So you'll see like $300 or 300 or something in there. That's because that started right at the end of the last fiscal year, and then the program's done well. It's expected to now bring in 7,000 this next fiscal year. It's a skills program.
Okay. And then the wheelchair basketball, the floor is not conducive to wheelchair basketball. We didn't put in the right floor. I mean,
So we've actually had meetings where we've had someone from the Wheelchair Basketball Association come out, take a look at the floor, and they didn't necessarily, we've heard comments that it's not conducive. He didn't necessarily say that, but this year, we were, I think in March, very sure that we were hoping to have something with them, and then it fell through. So I think on our end, that's just more looking at a different contact with that organization because we're having trouble getting a little bit of commitment from the individual that we originally were working with.
that's
So
the San Diego Naval Hospital, that guy, the San Diego. What is it?
yes, he was
Wolfpack.
he was on the San Diego
The
team.
number one
so.
team in California, yeah.
So I'm assuming it's because they have a lot going on, but we didn't get a definite no regarding the floor.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions? All right, very good. Thank you.
Next part of presentation is for other funds. Start with Measure R. Measure R operating costs, including stipends, audit service, and trail maintenance, which including the backyard trail. Measure R CIP project will be discussed during the CIP presentation in the later section. The table here summarizes the estimated fund balance as of June 30, 2026. As of June 30, 2026, if all the budgeted projects are funded and completed, the ending fund balance for Measure R will be around $800,000. Measure R is part of a general fund, and just beware, currently it's not being used for any other maintenance besides the trail maintenance or public safety contract costs. This slide lists of a Measure R projects by category. Most of the funds are budgeted under street improvement category. And then one thing I want to point out is the new project, the highly hydrant project, is budgeted under the public safety category. Same information as the last slide, but this is just presented in the pie chart. As you can tell, 83% of the funding is used and budgeted for street improvement funds projects. The next fund we will talk about is the water fund. For fiscal year 25-26, the projected revenue for water fund is 13.3 million, and the projected expenses for the water fund is 14.4 million, which leads to an estimated change in working capital decrease of about 1 million. As of June 30th, 2026, the estimated fund balance, working capital for water fund is about 5 million. Here is the summary of the revenue projections by category. The overall, if you compare with prior year, is an increase of 12% in revenue. Here's the pie chart presentation of the major revenue categories. Here is the summary of the projected expenses by category. Overall increase about 5%. Here's the pie chart presentation of it. Major category of expenditures will be purchase water and utilities, which is cost about 52% of the overall expenses. The next one we will talk about is the sewer fund. For fiscal year 25-26, the projected revenue for sewer fund is 8.1 million, and the projected expense for the sewer fund is 7.2 million. leads to an estimated change in working capital increase about 800,000. As of June 30, 2026, the estimated fund balance for sewer fund is 2.8 million. Here is the summary of the sewer fund revenues by category. Overall increase about 11.6%. This is the pie chart showing the revenue categories, revenue by categories for sewer fund. Here is summary of the projected expenses by category. The overall increase is about 4.84% for sewer fund. Here's the pie chart. As you can tell, 50% of the sewer fund expenditures is under the contractual professional services. The next fund category is the recycle water fund. For fiscal year 25-26, the projected revenue for recycle water fund is 2.6 million, and the total projected expense is about 2.8 million, which lead to an estimated change in working capital decrease about 180,000. The estimated ending working capital as of June 30, 2026 is about 5.4 million. Just to remember that Recycle Water Fund is a newly established fund about 2 years ago. The initial funding source for this fund is the loan from our sewer fund, which is 3.2 million. When eventually Recycle Water Fund need to pay back the loan to the sewer fund when the infrastructure is built and then start its operation. The next category is the other funds. First one I will talk about is the gas tax summary, gas tax fund. For fiscal year 25-26, the projected revenue for gas tax fund is 760,100, and the projected expenditure is 812,800, which lead to an estimated change in decrease in fund balance of 52,700. However, based on the most recent information received, both the estimated current year estimated revenue and fiscal year 25-26 projected revenue will be increased, which will increase the fund balance. The overall change will be only $958. Next category is the NPDES fund, National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. For fiscal year 25-26, the projected revenue for the NPDES fund is 153,000, and the projected expenditure is 159,100, which give us the estimated ending fund balance of 21,000. This is including a $20,000 subsidy from the general fund. That's the end of presentation for the other funds. Any questions?
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do you have any questions?
No questions. Thank you, Robin.
All right, very good. Greg, any questions?
Looking at the gas tax, what is our current rate right now for our gas tax that comes directly back to us?
We get an allocation from the state. So on Friday, they provided new revenue projections. So that's why Daphne was stating that our projected revenue of 760,000 is actually, when we come back, it's a little bit higher, about $15,000 more. So the state determines that allocation. There's it's not just based on people going to the gas pump, and there's like about a 200-page summary on how they determine the allocation of the gas tax. But that is the allocated part that the city gets.
But we don't have a actual 1% tax or
No.
that we actually tack on that goes directly to us? Or is that something that?
No, but I could bring back sort of a summary of how gas tax is determined and allocated. So.
Sophia, any questions? Kevin?
So, the big elephant in the room is what will the new apartments, what do you project they might bring to the city of Norco?
So the new apartments, once they're built, we will be getting a property tax.
Is that per
For that?
apartment, or is that just the property in general, or?
You know, that I don't know. I'll find out on, for that, but the property and, thank you, Colin.
The property in general, it's all owned by one owner. If they were condos, then you would get it by condo, but because it's one owner, one property, you get it per parcel.
Do we know, so you can find out what the projection of that might be?
Will do.
And then, what, I keep going back to this. I know we say we're built out, but there seems to be a lot of open space. And is there something that we could be doing to try to attract? I mean, I think we've only put $50,000 and we have, what, 2 people kind of working on it for economic development. We really do need one more leg.
Callie would like to take it.
I don't know if I would like to, but I will. I think that this would be a continuation of the meeting that we had with retail strategies, where we discussed that missing like 4th leg of the table. At this time, the available land is privately owned. And based on what the consultants have told us, it is extremely overpriced and expensive. So it's vacant for a reason.
Right.
It's not just by chance that it's vacant. I think that if it were more affordable, then it would definitely be developed. But that's the option of whoever owns that property, is to list it for whatever they think that it's valued at. So I think that that's a challenge that is more of a waiting game. As far as adding additional personnel for economic development, when we last spoke about this at that meeting, we discussed that we really don't have any development to market yet.
Right.
We have ideas and we have concepts that will hopefully be better envisioned in the general plan. But once we have something that we can pursue a public-private partnership or actually pitch to a developer to purchase or acquire additional parcels to build out this vision, that's where we would need more feet on the ground to attract retailers and tenants to that space. But right now, we don't have anything like that. So I do think that the best option that we have is to continue that contract for a nominal amount, truly, with retail strategies, who is looking to fill established spaces with bigger box retailers or more reliable retailers. And when we do have a concept that can come to reality, that would be the time to pursue additional efforts.
Does that also, like the Target Center, I noticed that some of the inner buildings have been empty for a long time. Conversely, I talked to Patrick, who is dealing with these buildings and dealing with the buildings on Second. He said he only has 1 unit left. So, and yet, 6 months ago, he said he had a whole bunch of spaces, but it looks like he's going to rent the last one out. So would that be included maybe in our projected revenue? Because he did say some of them are going to be retail center.
If they're retail center, yes, that will increase because for sales tax, that would be the point of sale.
Yeah, that's what he said. A couple of them are going to be point of sale. So, okay, well, fingers crossed. Thank you.
I would say without that information, it wouldn't be included in the budget.
No, I get it.
Okay.
I know. He just found out. So, although maybe we need to reach out to some of the businesses. I know Roger and I, when I first got on council and a couple years after, I visited every single business in Norco. And maybe we need to do that, break it up in such a way to find out how everybody's doing. Maybe, I don't know.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments from council? Anything else from staff? No? All right, I think overall, thank you for the presentation. It was, like Kevin said, very clear and concise and easy to understand, so that's definitely appreciated. This does remind me one other thing. Cost of staff time and printing of these council packets when we have iPads and stuff. I just want a cost with staff time and printing and delivery of council packets, please, included in the information brought back to the next study session. Yes. You know how many trees we're killing and how much staff time it takes somebody to print and hole
I will
punch
agree
and
to
blah,
it if we
blah,
can have a
blah.
class on how best to use it, because I try to use the darn thing, and it's just, there's so many pages. and
Well,
it's-
and I'll be honest, I was like, oh, hardcore paper, but then I got forced to use this because I was out of town. And so when you're forced to do it, you just have to do it. But I mean, yeah,
I mean, if we'll save a couple $1,000, I'm for it, I guess.
oh, it's easily going to be that number. Make it that number. No, just kidding. I'm sure it will be just paper alone. I know how much a ream of paper is these days, so.
So this concludes the presentation. Staff would be asking for direction moving forward to best prepare the proposed budget for the next workshop. The CIP budget will be the start of the next workshop, but we would then like to bring the proposed budget
At the next
for
meeting?
further discussion.
Oh, for further discussion, and then the vote in the last meeting in June, correct?
Correct. And just if, in that last meeting, if it's not adopted, then we will need a special meeting prior to June 30th.
Budget workshop adjourned.
We can go directly to closed session, we just can't go to open session until 7.
All right, so at this time, so we're just going to go right into closed session, right, Colin? So at this time, we're going to go into closed session. If the city attorney would please read the closed session item.
Going into closed session on conference with real property negotiators.
Excellent, thank you. Going to closed session. I'm going to call upon the city attorney to report out from closed session. Thank you.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, there was no reportable action in closed session.
Perfect, thank you. At this time, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance by myself and invocation by Chaplain Ball. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Chaplain.
Well, hello, everybody. Hello, hello. One nation under God. Isn't that great?
Yes.
Anyway, I'd like to say good afternoon, everybody here, and I pray that we all can have a good day after this meeting. Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, your love and beauty are infinite and higher than the heavens. Please guide us here today as we engage with one another for the benefit of our community. Grant us peace and unity here today, and may our actions be guided by you. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, sir. All right, at this time, we do have we have two presentations today. We'll start with the National Preservation Month proclamation with our city clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. As we know, May is National Preservation Month, and as the city clerk, I value the preservation of the history of the city close to my heart. The mayor has given me the honor tonight to read the proclamation to celebrate the dedicated individuals that help preserve the heritage that has shaped our local history and community, and those that continue to tell our story. The 2025 theme for Historic Preservation Month is Harnessing the Power of Place. Celebrates the ways in which preservation strengthens communities, supports a healthier planet, and builds a more just and connected society. And whereas the city of Norco recognizes its local preservationists who are essential to protecting and instilling awareness of historically significant buildings and landmarks in our community. And whereas the city of Norco is a diverse community that is honored to celebrate the history and legacies of preservationists who continue to preserve and protect Norco's history. Now, therefore, the mayor, Greg Newton, of the city of Norco, on behalf of the city council, does hereby proclaim May 25th, 2025 as National Preservation Month. And I would like to just add that the Heritage Room is open now every Thursday from 10 a.m. to 2 to our community, and all are welcome to visit as we have had different exhibits showcasing the history of Norco and its residents. We also hold one-day exhibits that highlight different periods of the community's history that aligned with core events happening throughout the year. We've been having a really good turnout. I was talking to Amy today because I was over there, and she said, you know, they're getting more and more people on Thursdays and different people. That's what she was excited to see. It's new people coming each week. She's making it a point to make sure weekly she adds something different or changes something up. So if people do want to come back weekly, there's something else to look at and something new to look at. She started putting up some of the memorial flags that you know, have been up on 6th Street in the past. So I took a few pictures and sent to the city manager today. She's already got a few of them up in the history room for, in honor of Memorial Day for Monday. So excited, and thank you, council, for your support on us revamping the Heritage Room. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dana. We also are celebrating Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. We will be recognizing May as this month by presenting a proclamation to honor community members who have contributed to the economic, cultural, spiritual, and or political development of our community. With that, I'm going to read just a little bit from the proclamation. Whereas the 2025 theme, A Legacy of Leadership and Resilience, honors the hard work of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander leaders who established a foundation for future generations to thrive and adapt to change and adversity. And whereas the City of Norco recognizes its local Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander history and reflects on the strides we have made to ensure that all citizens feel accepted and included. And whereas the City of Norco is a diverse community that is honored to celebrate the history and legacies of Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders who have contributed to the economic, cultural, spiritual, and political development of our city, state, and country. I, therefore, do declare on behalf of the Mayor of Norco and the City Council, May 2025 as Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month in the City of Norco, where all citizens, past, present, and future, are respected and recognized for their contributions to our community. The proclamation is going to be displayed at the Heritage Room. There's also going to be an exhibit showcasing the cities of Norco's Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander heritage as well. So another reason to go by the Heritage Room while they are open on Thursdays. So with that, we are going to go ahead and start into our regular agenda with item number 1, our City Council reports, and we'll start with Councilmember Bash.
I think the most important, well, a lot of things are important, but the number one thing that I went to was the inauguration of the Tech Bridge Maverick program. That's just right here to the north. I really do believe that this is something that eventually Norco is going to be able to tap into. It's the ability for private companies to tap into the Navy base and March Air Force Base and link to federal patents. And because those are actually ours. And you won't be able to, tap into missile technology, but, different things, foams and things they develop as a matter of developing missiles and doing stuff like that. What's very interesting, and I didn't know this until this program, and it kind of is in keeping with Preservation Month, in the mid-1960s, our jets were losing against the Russian MiGs in Vietnam. We were getting shot down right and left. And they hired something that was called the Alt Report, and the Alt Report talked about, was supposed to discover why this was. And ultimately, it was decided that it was because our planes were bad and our pilots didn't know how to fly. And so they came to the Fleet Missile Systems Analysis and Evaluation Group here in Norco, and they said, all right, we're going to set up this program, and you have to assess it, evaluate it, and keep tabs with it to make sure it's working. And the program that they created was Top Gun. And so I thought that was pretty cool thing. And then I was very proud of us on Saturday with the Ruck Challenge, Tiny Tots Olympics. The Ruck Challenge was really neat, all those veterans running through all of our streets. The ranch tour was awesome, but I have to point out the Tiny Tots Olympics was absolutely awesome. That was just fantastic, the job you guys did. I think that's the most kids we've ever had, correct? I think so. The only problem, and I pointed this out to Lisette, and she'll be talking to you guys, is the staff had more fun than the kids. That's all I have.
On May 8th, I attended the RTA Transportation Now meeting. It was business as usual. Ridership is up. And on May 14th, we had the RCTC board meeting. And it is, as everybody knows, budget season. And it was very interesting. And I will have a better summary, at our next meeting of everything. There was a lot to take in, so thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bowen?
I got a meeting tomorrow, so I don't have anything, but I did get the memo for Hawaiian Day, and nobody else did.
All right, I have nothing to report at this time. And Mayor Newton?
Nothing to report at this time. Thank you.
All right, very good. Moving on to item number 2, public comments, and I will call upon the city clerk.
This is the time when persons wishing to address the presiding governmental body regarding the consent calendar or matters not on the agenda may be heard. Please limit comments to 3 minutes or less. The governmental body shall not discuss or act relative to any general public comment. I have one speaker card, Mayor Jeff Cahan.
Good evening, council, staff. A couple of things I just wanted to point out. Saturday is the West Coast Thunder. That'll be, I believe, leaving from the Riverside Harley Davidson, and they're going to be coming up to our memorial as part of their run. So that's a great thing that they're focusing on our Veterans Memorial as part of their West Coast Thunder this year. Obviously, on Monday is Memorial Day, so I'm sure you've all received invitations, but just for those that haven't, or for those watching at home, please join us on Monday up at the memorial at 10 a.m. as we commemorate the fallen, and we will be adding, sadly, another Norconian is added to the wall, Al Figley. And speaking of the fallen, 8 days ago, Norco suffered a tremendous loss with the death of United States Marine Corps Sergeant Larry Eckhoff, a friend, a patriot, and a Veterans Commissioner. And I would respectfully request that we end the meeting tonight in his honor. Thank you.
No further comments, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Moving on to item number 3, the consent calendar. Do any members of the council have any items to be pulled? Mr. Mayor? Any items to be pulled?
No items. Motion to approve.
Is there a second? All right. It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar.
And can you please vote? Mayor Newton, can I get your verbal vote, please?
Yes, you may. I vote yes.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimous.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. So moving on to item number 5, which is City Council and Staff Communications. City staff? Yes, Dana.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just want to let the community know that we have extended the recruitment for boards and commissions to June 5th, 2025 at 6 p.m. I haven't received too many applications, so I did want to extend it another week. I did go to the Chamber of Commerce today to meet there and announce our positions that are open. I also will be stopping at the Eat Center tomorrow and talking to one of the classes there, hopefully to get the word out again there. And we do have a youth commission seat open for the Veterans Commission, so I did send out to the school district like I did previously to reach out for students to let them know that that position is available also. So I'm hoping in this next week or so we'll get more applications. I'm doing the best I can with getting the word out and getting more people to participate. Other than that, that's it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other city staff? City attorney? City manager? All right, city council. We'll start down with you, Councilman Bash.
I just have a request, Lisa. Is there any way that we could change the Historic/Agricultural Commission from the afternoon, midday to evening? I think we'll get more response. A lot of people just can't get there because they're working. Change the time. Are they now at 6 o'clock? How long have they been at 6? 2 years. Oh, geez. So what are they complaining about?
It's just I'm just not getting the feedback for people applying. So, which is always a,
Well, make it 10 o'clock.
no,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I got a call just
Respectfully, no.
today that needs to be later.
No, it's 6 o'clock.
All right.
So I just need applicants, so anywhere you all can push it out on your,
Okay, I will. Well, I'm surprised by that.
Groups.
All right, thank you.
thank you.
Right, Thea? Greg? Mr. Mayor? Okay. And I don't have anything either. This evening, we will be closing the meeting in honor of Veterans Commission member and United States Marine Corps Sergeant Larry Eckhoff. He'll join me in a moment of silence. Meeting adjourned 7:19.